The Galactic Coalition's High Council chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from dozens of species debated the fate of a small blue planet that had recently joined their alliance. At the center of the vast, domed room, shimmering holograms displayed the latest reports from the Zerthan front. Burning worlds, shattered fleets, and a rising death toll that no strategy seemed able to stem. The Zerthan Dominion, ruthless collective of insectoid warlords, was proving to be an enemy unlike any the Coalition had faced. Humans are unsuited for this conflict, said Counselor Drain, a tall, silver-scaled alien whose voice rang with contempt. They lack the discipline, the resilience, and the technological sophistication. Let them stick to farming and diplomacy. A murmur of agreement swept through the chamber, but the human envoy, Ambassador Tyler Hardman, did not flinch. He stood, his calm demeanor masking a simmering defiance. With respect, Counselor, he began, you've mistaken caution for cowardice. Humanity is no stranger to adversity. If you want proof, allow us to demonstrate. The chamber erupted into laughter, a cacophony of clicks, hisses, and hums. Counselor Drain leaned forward, his slitted eyes narrowing. Demonstrate? Against the Zerthans? I would rather send a brood of hatchlings to fight. Tyler held his ground. We've already selected our representative. He's on his way. The laughter stopped. The air grew heavy as holograms flickered to show the incoming transmission. A man's face appeared, rugged, weathered by years of conflict, with piercing eyes that seemed to size up the entire room. His name flashed across the display. Captain Jack Kincaid. The council chamber fell silent as Kincaid's deep voice filled the room. Captain Jack Kincaid reporting. Permission to speak freely. Drain sneered. By all means, human. Kincaid leaned closer to the camera, his tone cold and deliberate. You think humans are cowards? Then you've never met me. A week later, Kincaid arrived on Vrid, a desolate planet on the edge of Coalition territory. The Zerthans had overrun the outpost there, their chittering legions and biomechanical war machines leaving the planet's defenders in disarray. The Coalition had sent a token force to hold the line, but morale was in tatters. As Kincaid stepped off the transport ship, his team followed close behind, for men who embodied the finest traits of human ingenuity and grit. Sergeant Frank "Brick" Thompson towered over the others, a mountain of muscle armed with a minigun almost as large as he was. Lieutenant Eric "Hawk" Harrison, lean and sharp-eyed, carried a sniper rifle with the casual ease of a man who could thread a needle from a mile away. Corporal Mike "Gizmo" Grant lugged a bag of tools and parts, his grease-streaked hands already working on a jury-rigged device. Lastly, Private Jake "Shadow" Daniels moved like a ghost, his eyes scanning for threats even before they disembarked. The Coalition officers on Vrid were less than welcoming. You're the reinforcements, sneered Commander Lyrak, a feline alien whose fur bristled with irritation. 5 humans against a Zerthan battalion? This is a joke. Kincaid ignored the comment, his gaze fixed on the holographic map of the battlefield. Show me their positions, he said curtly. Lyrak reluctantly complied, outlining the Zerthan forces entrenched in the planet's canyons. Their lines were fortified, their bioshields nearly impenetrable. A direct assault would be suicide. Kincaid studied the map in silence before turning to his team. Brick, prep the heavy gear. Hawk, find us a vantage point. Gizmo, give me something that'll fry their shields. Shadow, you're on recon. Move. As his men dispersed, Kincaid faced Lyrak. We're not here to die. We're here to win. That night, the Zerthans launched an assault on the Coalition's last remaining stronghold. The alien soldiers advanced with chilling precision, their war cries echoing through the canyons. Coalition forces scrambled to mount a defense, but panic was evident in their ranks. Then the humans struck. From the cliffs above, Hawk's sniper rifle barked, each shot taking down a Zerthan officer. Chaos rippled through their ranks as the once-coordinated advance faltered. Brick emerged from the shadows, his minigun roaring to life. The alien front lines disintegrated under the hail of bullets. In the chaos, Shadow infiltrated the enemy's rear, planting explosives on their shield generators. When the devices detonated, the Zerthan defenses collapsed, leaving them vulnerable. At the center of it all was Kincaid, directing the battle with ruthless efficiency. He moved through the battlefield like a storm, taking down enemies with precision shots and barking orders that kept his team synchronized. By dawn, the Zerthans were in full retreat. The coalition soldiers, battered but alive, stared in disbelief at the carnage. Kincaid's team stood together, their armor scorched but their resolve unshaken. Commander Lyrak approached, his earlier scorn replaced with grudging respect. You actually did it." Kincaid wiped alien blood from his knife and sheathed it. "That was the easy part," he said. The humans spent the next few days fortifying the outpost, turning salvaged Zerthan tech into weapons and traps. Coalition officers watched in awe as Gizmo transformed a pile of scrap into a shield-disrupting cannon. Word of the human success spread quickly. Stories of their cunning and ferocity reached even the Zerthans, who began to whisper of a new enemy. A human so relentless he seemed more demon than man. They called him the Boogeyman. As Kincaid prepared for the next battle, he addressed his team. "They thought we'd run. They thought we'd break. Now they know what happens when you back a human into a corner." The team nodded, their faces grim but determined. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the coalition had hope. And the Zerthans had something they hadn't known in centuries: fear. The air on Vrid grew colder with every passing day as the Zerthans intensified their assault. Their swarming legions adapted quickly, employing strategies that pressed the coalition defenders to their limits. For every victory Kincaid's team earned, the Zerthans retaliated with overwhelming force. They had begun deploying biomechanical drones that swept the terrain with pulse wave sensors, rendering traditional stealth tactics useless. The coalition soldiers, already wary of trusting humans, whispered doubts. Victory had been a fluke, they said. The Boogeyman's luck would run out. Kincaid, unfazed by the growing unease, gathered his team in the fortified command room. A hologram of the battlefield flickered before them, displaying the Zerthans' advancing forces. The enemy had established a forward operating base in a canyon to the east, from which their drones and troops launched relentless waves of attacks. "They're cutting off our supply lines and bleeding us out," Kincaid said, his voice steady but cold. "We've got 2 days before they break through our defenses. If that base isn't neutralized, this planet is lost." Brick cracked his knuckles. "You want me to take the canyon head on? I'll give them a light show they won't forget." "Too risky," Hawk interjected, studying the map. "That choke point is a death trap. We'd never get close enough to hit the base." Kincaid nodded. "Which is why we won't be fighting them on their terms. We'll outthink them." Gizmo, leaning over a pile of alien tech, grinned. "You got something in mind, boss?" Kincaid's eyes glinted. "Oh, I've got a few ideas. Let's show them what humans can do." Over the next 24 hours, the team worked tirelessly. Gizmo, with the help of coalition engineers, reverse-engineered a captured Zerthan drone, reprogramming its pulse wave sensors to emit false signals. Shadow scouted the canyon under the cover of darkness, mapping the enemy's patrol routes and identifying weak points in their defenses. Hawk found a vantage point overlooking the canyon, calibrating his rifle for the perfect shot. Brick prepped a modified rocket launcher, its warhead loaded with an experimental explosive Gizmo had cooked up, a hybrid of human and Zerthan technology. When the time came, the plan unfolded with surgical precision. At dusk, the reprogrammed drone soared into the canyon, emitting signals that mimicked a coalition assault force. The Zerthans, unable to detect the ruse, scrambled to respond. They redirected their patrols and concentrated their forces on the western entrance, leaving their eastern flank exposed. Shadow, moving like a wraith, slipped into the base and disabled the perimeter defenses. He planted charges on key infrastructure points, his every movement calculated and deliberate. As he vanished back into the shadows, the charges detonated, plunging the base into chaos. On the cliffs above, Hawk lined up his shot. Through his scope, he tracked the Zerthan commander, a towering insectoid with a carapace glinting in the low light. The rifle's report was barely audible over the din of the explosions, but the result was unmistakable. The commander collapsed headless. As the Zerthans reeled, Brick and Gizmo unleashed their assault. The rocket screamed through the air, its warhead erupting in a burst of energy that disrupted the Zerthan bioshields and fried their drones. Coalition forces, emboldened by the humans' daring attack, surged forward, overwhelming the disorganized enemy. By dawn, the canyon was silent. The Zerthan base lay in ruins, and the coalition soldiers cheered as they reclaimed their supply lines. Back at the command center, Kincaid debriefed his team. Each man bore the marks of the battle, bruises, burns, and exhaustion, but their resolve remained unbroken. "They'll hit back harder now," Hawk said, cleaning his rifle. "They'll adapt, just like we did." "Let them try," Brick growled. "We'll knock them down again." Kincaid's lips curved into a grim smile. "We've shown them what humans are capable of. But this war isn't just about winning battles. It's about making them fear us." The stories of the Canyon Strike spread quickly, both within the coalition and among the Zerthans. The Boogeyman's legend grew, whispered even among the insectoid soldiers who had once considered humans beneath notice. They began to see humans not as weaklings, but as predators who could twist even the Zerthans' superior technology against them. Days later, a coalition officer approached Kincaid in the command center. He was a stiff, by-the-book type, his uniform immaculate even in the chaos of war. "Captain Kincaid," he began, his voice tinged with unease, "the High Council has taken an interest in your methods. They want to know if you're acting within coalition protocols." Kincaid looked up from his map, his expression unreadable. "I didn't realize the High Council was on the ground fighting this war." The officer bristled. "This is a delicate situation. If you push too hard, you could provoke the Zerthans into even greater retaliation." Kincaid stood, his presence towering despite the officer's authority. "They've already burned our worlds and slaughtered millions. If you think protocol is going to save us, you're welcome to take your complaints to the Zerthans. I'm sure they'll listen." The officer faltered, then retreated without another word. As night fell, Kincaid and his team gathered outside the base, watching the stars. The galaxy seemed impossibly vast, each point of light a reminder of how small they were. But for Kincaid, it wasn't daunting, it was motivating. "They underestimated us once," he said, breaking the silence. "They won't make that mistake again. And when they come for us, we'll be ready." The others nodded, their expressions hard. They knew the Zerthans wouldn't stop until either humanity or the Dominion was broken. But for the first time, it wasn't just survival driving them. It was the chance to prove that humans didn't just belong in the galaxy. They could dominate it. The Zerthan homeworld loomed ahead, a shadowed sphere wreathed in the red haze of its atmosphere. For centuries, it had been the nerve center of a relentless war machine, its towering spires and endless hive complexes a testament to the Dominion's supremacy. Now, for the first time in recorded history, an Allied fleet hung in orbit, poised to strike at the heart of the enemy. At the center of it all was the human strike team, led by Captain Jack Kincaid, the Boogeyman himself. "Let's be clear," Kincaid said, his voice carrying across the command deck of the Coalition flagship. "This isn't just a battle. This is our message to the galaxy. If we fail, Earth isn't just a target. It's a footnote in the Zerthans' history." The gathered officers from various species listened in silence, their skepticism tempered by recent victories. Kincaid's reputation had grown too large to dismiss, but that didn't mean they trusted him entirely. Commander Lyrak, now an uneasy ally after the triumph on Valkrid, stepped forward. "We have your back, Captain. But this assault, it's madness. Even with the fleet, their planetary defenses are." "Not my problem," Kincaid cut in. "Our job is to take out their command network. We cripple that, and the rest of the fleet can mop up the stragglers." He looked at his team. "Brick, you're our battering ram. Hawk, you'll keep the skies clear. Gizmo, I need those defenses offline. Shadow." "Already know," Shadow interrupted, his voice low and even. "Find the hole. Slip through it." Kincaid's lips twitched in the faintest ghost of a smile. "Exactly." The plan was simple in theory, suicidal in execution. While the Coalition fleet engaged the Zerthan Armada in orbit, Kincaid's team would land on the surface, infiltrate the central hive spire, and destroy the Dominion's command core. The core wasn't just their nerve center. It was their symbol of invincibility. As the human team descended in their dropship, the battle above unfolded in flashes of light and deafening explosions. Coalition cruisers clashed with Zerthan dreadnoughts, their weapons painting the void with deadly brilliance. On board the human vessel, the team prepared in silence, each man focused on the mission ahead. The dropship bucked violently as it entered the atmosphere, anti-air fire tearing through the sky. Hawk leaned over his targeting console, his hand steady as he manually guided the ship through the barrage. "Hold on," he said through clenched teeth. "We're not dead yet." Moments later, they hit the ground hard, skidding to a halt amidst a barren wasteland of red rock and ash. The hive spire loomed in the distance, its twisted, organic architecture pulsing with an eerie, faint light. "Move," Kincaid barked, and the team sprang into action. They advanced quickly, using the rugged terrain as cover. Zerthan patrols swarmed the area, their insectoid forms skittering with unnerving speed. Brick opened fire with his modified minigun, laying down suppressive fire as Hawk picked off enemies with precision shots. Shadow darted ahead, silently dispatching sentries and marking clear paths for the team. As they reached the base of the hive spire, Gizmo set to work on the entry point, a heavily fortified biomechanical gate. "This isn't going to be quiet," he muttered, pulling out a plasma cutter. "Then make it fast," Kincaid replied, scanning the horizon for reinforcements. Minutes later, the gate exploded inward, and the team plunged into the hive's labyrinthine interior. The walls pulsated with an unsettling organic rhythm, and the air was thick with a humid, acrid stench. Inside, resistance was fierce. Zerthan warriors emerged from hidden alcoves, their razor-sharp appendages gleaming. The team fought their way through, each man operating with brutal efficiency. Brick's sheer firepower held the enemy at bay, while Hawk and Shadow worked in tandem to neutralize high-priority targets. As they neared the core, Gizmo hacked into the hive systems, rerouting power and disabling traps. "They're onto us," he warned, sweat dripping from his brow. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before they flood this place." "Then we finish in 5, Kincaid said, his tone unyielding. At last they reached the command core, a massive, pulsating sphere suspended in the center of a cavernous chamber. It glowed with an otherworldly energy, its surface alive with shifting patterns that seemed to hum with an alien intelligence. "Brick, plant the charges," Kincaid ordered. As Brick set the explosives, the chamber began to shake. From above, a Zerthan warlord descended, a towering figure encased in a spiked, chitinous exoskeleton. Its voice was a guttural hiss, its mandibles clicking as it spoke. "Humans," it sneered, "you have come far only to die here." Kincaid stepped forward, his weapon trained on the warlord. "We're not here to negotiate." The warlord lunged, its bladed limbs slicing through the air. Kincaid rolled to the side, firing as he moved. The others joined the fight, their combined firepower forcing the warlord to retreat. Brick finished setting the charges and roared, "We're good to go." "Fall back," Kincaid shouted, covering the team's retreat. As they sprinted through the hive's corridors, the explosives detonated, sending a shockwave through the structure. The core erupted in a blinding flash, its destruction sending ripples through the Zerthan network. Outside, the team emerged just as the hive spire began to collapse, its organic walls crumbling into ash. Overhead, the coalition fleet pushed the Zerthans into full retreat, their ships breaking formation and fleeing into the void. On the ground, Kincaid surveyed the battlefield. The hive spire's destruction had turned the tide, but the cost had been steep. Coalition soldiers cheered, their morale rekindled by the humans' audacity. Later, aboard the flagship, the Coalition Council reconvened. This time, there was no laughter, no mockery. Instead, there was a quiet reverence as Kincaid stood before them. "You've proven yourselves," said Counselor Drain, his tone grudging but sincere. "Humanity has earned its place among us." Kincaid's response was simple. "We didn't come here for approval. We came to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth." As the meeting adjourned, Kincaid returned to his team, who were already preparing for the next mission. The war was far from over, but the humans had done more than survive. They had changed the game. The Boogeyman had become more than a legend. He was a symbol of humanity's resolve, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again.